Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, the state budget may be built on a house of cards. We'll see about that, and we're a very important health care update. And then the Auditor General of the state of Pennsylvania will be on the program, and he's doing those pesky little audits that somehow some people in state government don't always appreciate. We appreciate them. Pennsylvania politics, in depth and in detail. And guess what? It all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, I have Jim Redmond, who's a senior vice president from the Hospital and Healthsystem Association of Pennsylvania, sitting across from me as often is the case, and Jim is here to chat. You know, just when you think like the state budget, it's over, it's gone, it's done for another year, there's a problem with it, and it's not a little problem, is it, Jim Redmond? Potentially.
No,
potentially.
It's a big problem.
All right, go ahead. Talk about $850 million could come down around us like a house of cards. Go ahead.
Well, the federal government approved a stimulus act back in January of 2009, February of 2009, I guess. One of the components of that was to increase the federal matching funds for state Medicaid programs.
Medical assistance to the poor. Go ahead.
That expires at the end of this year. And Pennsylvania, as did 29 other states, assumed that Congress was going to extend it because obviously we're not out of this recession. And that extension has not yet occurred. That amount of money for Pennsylvania is roughly around $850 million. And putting this year's budget together, they assumed that that was going to occur. Mm-hmm. And hopefully over the next month or two, Congress will attempt once again to try to pass that.
All right, now there are two aspects of this that I want to talk to you about. One is that the bill that Jim is referring to is in the United States Senate, and even at this point, the Senate recommendations are less than what everyone assumed it would be, meaning that if the Congress is likely to pass it, Pennsylvania would not get $850 million, but probably something less than that, which means, we could have a continuing hole in the budget that would have to be filled in some fashion, correct or not?
That's correct. Actually, both the House and the Senate have passed versions of this. They just haven't agreed upon the final package. And in June, the Senate attempted it several times, and they reduced the amount, phasing out the additional federal monies. So somewhere between 0 and 850 will probably be the likely number.
Now, look, you spent. I want to get to some aspects of the hospitals that you're the expert on. But before I do that, you're also an expert on this budget process. You've been through a lot of these. So if this were not to come, if this would not come to pass, would the legislature, you think, deal with this before the elections? Or do you think it's something they're likely to postpone? The state will have money. The state's approved the budget and a fiscal code. The state has money, obviously, to get into next year easily, into next calendar year. Is this something they're likely to put off and let a new governor and a new legislature deal with?
You know, if you look at the legislative schedule for the fall, it's very limited.
Yeah.
The Senate is probably going to be in for only 9 days.
Right.
The House for a little bit longer.
Translation, they're out running for re-election, which, you know, they have a right to do, I guess. Go ahead.
And the major issue that they're going to face is really the tax on the Marcellus Shale, and I think that's going to take a lot of their time. And it could be that they sort of kick the can down the road and deal with this with our next governor.
All right. They have two, before we run to break, they have two big things they've agreed to do by October 1. One is to deal with the Marcellus Shale situation, which is a big debate. The other one is the creation of an independent fiscal office, which would provide the numbers for the budget preparation and other considerations. That's the second big thing, right?
You're correct.
Now, on that one, when you deal, I mean, you deal with these budget numbers all the time. You have to rely on the budget numbers provided by the governor's office or by the how does that work for you? You know, in your work.
Well, the primary source of the information is from the governor's office, and each of the four caucus appropriations offices also review those numbers.
Okay.
But you're right, the governor's office is the primary generator of that. And the area that is really the most controversial are estimates in terms of tax revenues.
Yep, because on that they can make the decisions about how much to spend.
Right.
All right, when we come back, we're going to check in and check on the status of the hospitals in Pennsylvania, huge employers and obviously important to everyone. And we'll find out where they stand with in terms of the underfunding of hospitals. That and plus Jack Wagner coming up after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back. Well, we're talking with Jim Redmond, Jack Wagner, the Auditor General. We'll talk about those pesky audits that he does. I'll keep you out of the audit business here, Jim. We're talking about these important issues that relate to the state budget, and I want to segue now into hospitals. Give me an overview. Look, hospitals, big employers, they matter. We know when we need them, right? When we end up there. So, well, give us kind of an overview of the health of the hospitals in the state.
Well, as you know, the Medicaid program provides coverage to over 2 million Pennsylvanians who are primarily disabled.
2 million to 12 million of us.
Right.
12 million of us. That's. Go ahead.
They're primarily children, disabled, elderly, those that have chronic health care problems. And for years, the Medicaid program has really underfunded hospital payments. We get, on average, about 80 cents on the dollar.
Meaning what it actually cost you.
Right. And looking at the state's financial situation, we felt we had to take a bold move in terms of trying to address this, and came forward with a proposal to draw down additional federal monies using a hospital assessment, much like what we already do for nursing homes and Medicaid managed care. That was adopted by the Senate and the House, 48-2 in the Senate, 190-5 in the House, and now it has to go through the process of getting federal approval, which we estimate will take another 6 months.
In real terms, that will mean a larger source of revenue for hospitals.
That's right.
On the Medicaid side.
Right.
Okay.
It'll draw down.
Go ahead.
Close to $700 million in new federal funds on an annual basis.
And this has nothing to do with this FMAP money or that other money that we talk about. That's completely independent of that, right?
Yes.
Okay. We've talked about this before. Overall, are most of the hospitals in good fiscal shape in the state? We get these reports from time to time. You know, some in better shape than others.
They seem to have weathered the major part of the recession. Much of what has impacted hospitals is loss of their investment income, like everybody else.
Yeah.
What they're now seeing is really a slacking of demand as people postpone elective medical procedures or lose their health
That's
insurance.
An important point, by the way.
Actually, some of the volumes are down throughout the state.
Yeah. Now, do you expect, before I let you go, one other question. Do you expect that once this, you get a lot of folks who pour in, you do get folks who pour into the emergency rooms for all sorts of reasons. I mean, mostly because they need care. Some because they don't have any coverage and they're just there for.
We're the safety net. We're the last place that they can go.
You've done this assessment of the, and I want you to come back in another time. I'll get into this in some detail because I think this is important. Do you think that the whole business of emergency room use will get better or worse once features of the national health care law and people get? Do you expect it to decline? The people and they'll find regular physicians and or clinics. What's your sense of that?
I think we're going to face a problem because we have a shortage of physicians, and especially a shortage of primary care physicians, family physicians, internists, pediatricians. And as more people have insurance coverage, they tend to use health care, go and see the doctor. But if they can't get an appointment with a doctor, they're going to probably end up in our emergency departments. And that was the case in Massachusetts, which went to a universal health insurance program a couple of years ago.
We're going to end it here, but I know people who have coverage, who they'll call, and if they have a problem, the doctor will say, "Well, go to the emergency room." We find a lot of that. Now, I think the doctors are right. They're being cautious. You know, they don't want to fool around with somebody who has some symptom. But, you know, I think the hospitals are still going to have a lot. I mean, if we have a shortage of physicians, and particularly let's take general practitioners, and we know we're going to have a shortage of family docs. You agree?
Yes.
Okay. So your family doc is got overwhelmed. You got some kind of emergency problem. What's he going to do? He's going to send you where? To one of your facilities, right? I can't blame him. I'm not blaming him for that. And where do you want to go? You send you to the hospital, right? So I think this could all change, but it may change in another way, right?
I think we're going to have to look at better use of nurse practitioners and physician assistants and others who can help out.
I agree.
With the care.
All right, Jack Wagner, he does those pesky audits, the Auditor General. He's here. We're going to talk about a couple of them. Some of them you won't believe. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back. Well, the Auditor General of the state of Pennsylvania, Jack Wagner, is with me today, and we're talking about these pesky audits you keep doing that, you know, point out all this waste, fraud, inefficiency. And does anybody get it? I mean, some of us do. I mean, we do get what you're doing here and why you're doing it. Does anybody get it? Come on, talk about that.
Well, we wish the administration would embrace our audits because we firmly believe that there are significant cost reductions by implementing our findings and recommendations. Department of Public Welfare medical assistance audits is one area where we have identified hundreds of millions of dollars in savings. Special allowances, which is a training for back-to-work programs, another area where there's tens of millions of dollars that have been wasted. The LIHEAP audit of several years ago, the Government Accounting Office.
Hold on, that's a low-income assistance program that provides money for folks who are poor for make sure they have heat. Is that it? Heat.
Absolutely, it's a audit that was taken by the federal government, and they have found significant fraud in other states. We identified that here in Pennsylvania, where dead people were actually collecting money. So yes, Terry. We think there's significant savings by implementing the recommendations in our audits.
Look, General Wagner, I want to talk some specifically about a couple of these, but before we do now, let me make sure. Look, your point is not that these programs aren't good. Your point is that by having this waste, fraud, and inefficiency, in fact, the people who deserve the benefits and the program's uses are prostituted from their original purpose. Do I have that right?
It's 2 points. It's number one, what you just said, that those who desperately are in need of these programs, especially during these very difficult fiscal times, can avail themselves to it. And number two, if properly managed, can reduce the cost to the taxpayer.
So you're not being Scrooge here. Your point is you want to be helpful to people, and the people who every nickel should go to the people who deserve the benefits, and no one who deserves it should get a nickel. I mean, basically, that's what you're saying.
Yes, I am saying that, and in the case of LIHEAP, 100% of the money is not state taxpayer money, it's federal money.
That's federal money.
Of course, it originates from Pennsylvania taxpayers, go to the federal government back here. So yes, help the people, those who truly need it.
Yeah.
Make sure there's no fraud, no waste, no abuse in the system.
Yeah. But, and then I want to talk specifically about a couple of these, but the bigger point here, or a related point, has to do with the tough budget we're having. Mm-hmm. So we have these tough budgets where, you know, I think the legislature kicks the ball down, you know, that's a new expression, kicks the can down the road and deal with the more serious problems later. But some of this money could go into balancing the budget as well. Not the LIHEAP program, but these other savings, state savings that you've identified over the years, right?
There's no doubt about it. The dependence on $850 million of federal money for the medical assistance program.
Yep.
If, in fact, we don't get that money, and I believe, you believe, and everyone, including the Tooth Fairy, believes that this is not real money for Pennsylvania, maybe a portion of it.
Right.
But if we don't get that $850 million, there's a significant hole in the budget. So therefore, let's save money through better management of the program so the program can be funded appropriately to help people.
Well, I mean, and we're going to go to a break, and then I want to ask you about the stimulus money and some of these other things which you've done. But you know, we've had, look, your position is extremely important to the state. You're the fiscal watchdog. Do you think that there ought to be, that you ought to have the ability, when you leave, whoever, whether it's you or somebody else, to go in and should you have more teeth in the law to allow you to do more, or are you satisfied with what? I know you don't do the legislative audits. You can't touch them because they've set themselves up as a little kingdom. Go ahead.
Well, I wish we could do audit the General Assembly. I wish we could audit some of the court monies. Yeah. Those two areas were restricted, significantly restricted. And so, yes, I wish we had more teeth, but Terry, I have to tell you, when you look at the Department of Auditor General in Pennsylvania compared to other states, we have a heck of a lot more influence than the majority of states.
There you do. All right, we're going to talk about how the stimulus money was used. The Auditor General has done. They've done an audit. There's some interesting findings. Unacceptable, I think, is the word that the Auditor General has used to describe some of the use of the stimulus money. Back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back to the program. I'm talking with the Auditor General Jack Wagner about these, as I call them, these pesky audits that show some fraud, abuse, and waste in government. Waste, fraud, and abuse. What's that about? At any rate, Auditor General, let's look. You've done some business with the stimulus money. You looked at some departments and found that even the stimulus money was not used properly. Talk about that.
Well, it wasn't utilized quickly enough.
Quickly enough, okay.
Meaning that it did not have its intended purpose the way the President, the Congress wanted it to create jobs or to retain jobs. Now, that was a minor issue and a minor audit, but we're also looking at the use of stimulus monies within the Department of Transportation to make sure it was all spent appropriately and efficiently and in a timely manner. Let's face it, we're in a recession. Yep. We want to get dollars in and out the door. Now, I have to say the stimulus monies, the far majority of what we've looked at by state government has been properly managed. Okay. And has been right back out the door for highway projects, bridge projects, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't have a big problem with that. But in one category, as it related to child care, the Department of Public Welfare sat on the money for about a year prior to using it.
So the good news is you think, and look, when governments do something right, we want to make sure that we point that out.
Yes.
And our job is not just to badmouth governments per se. But so you're reasonably content that your audits have shown that the stimulus money in our state mostly and by and large have been used properly, and your argument is they could have gotten the money out more quickly.
In the category of child care, yes.
Child care.
We have found some minor discrepancies within PennDOT in terms of projects and verification of dollars, mass transit issues, Buy American issues, et cetera, et cetera. But the stimulus dollars, generally speaking, have been properly managed.
All right, that's good news, and we want to point that out. Let's turn a minute to this. Look, you were a state senator for many years. You've probably paid as close attention to Harrisburg and the processes here as anybody else. Give us, before I let you go, give us your sense about the budget process and this business of somehow building these budgets that to a lot of people seem to be based on a house of cards. What's your sense about that?
Well, Terry, this year I think this budget is a budget of smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
And I really mean that. It's the first budget in 8 years that's passed on time. We all know it's dependent on $850 million in federal medical assistance monies. That will never occur at that level. So that's almost a $1 billion deficit. It's dependent on a 3.2% increase in revenues. That's almost $1 billion. This past year's budget was less $1.2 billion in revenues. We're still in a recession. This recession may take another dip. There is probably a gap of $2 billion in this year's budget.
And they haven't also fixed the infrastructure problem, which we know we desperately need money for. We got to have this, which I know you've been a big supporter of. We haven't fixed the pension system yet. They've done, they're talking about doing it. And we've got a $2 billion unemployment compensation problem.
We have all those problems. And some have estimated next year's budget there will be a $5 billion deficit. It may be north of $5 billion, based on the fact that this budget is underfunded. So, we passed a budget this year that exceeds last year. In my strong opinion, it should have been no greater than or less than last year. Every family is living on less. State government needs to live on less.
All right, as always, great. Look, I compliment you on the job that you do. You got a you're in a controversy. You're doing things that people don't like. We need fiscal watchdogs now more than ever. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, there you have it. The Auditor General of the state of Pennsylvania, Jack Wagner. Hey, thanks for watching, and as always, stay well.